Right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Cabinet on Monday, the 5th of July, 2021. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Just Councillor John Toy.
And I also have apologies from Councillor, thank you, I was trying to think of his last name. I knew it was Nigel, but it was Nigel Lloyd, thank you. That is the one thing I've still got from COVID, is sometimes I get some brain fog. Okay, so apologies for absence. Minutes. The minutes of the last meeting. Does anyone have any comments they would like to make on the minutes of the last meeting? Councillor Holiday and then Councillor Cushing.
Chair, it says on page 4 that the chair agreed there's an update on the outturn report to this cabinet meeting, and it hasn't.
That's fine.
Happened.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor, sorry.
Sorry. Yes, pretty similar. It just said that we're expecting an outturn report update in this cabinet meeting, and I can't see that anywhere on the agenda. So just check that will actually be covered.
I will let Councillor Seward respond to your query. Thank you both.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question. I'm quite happy to provide a short verbal update. The outturn report will be going through the governance process in September. That's been reported both to the GRAC committee and also to overview and scrutiny, along with an explanation. And in relation to the council's financial position, and more significantly or importantly moving forward, as the cabinet member, I have a briefing meeting later this month with the finance team to go through a range of issues.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any comments on the minutes for the last meeting? No? In which case, do I have a proposer, please, for those minutes? Councillor Kershaw, thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Fitch-Tillett, thank you. All those in favour, please. Councillor Gay, are you content? Thank you. That's unanimous then, thank you. Do we have any public questions or statements? No. Do we have any items of urgent business? I'm not aware of any. No. Declarations of interest. Thank you, Councillor Shires. They're non-pecuniary, but just to be completely open, I have been working with the North Walsham Football Club on health strategy and what they're doing. And on the item regarding, let me just find the item number. On item 14, the proposed tenant, I knew 6 years ago because my son attended something. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Anybody else got any declarations of interest that they would like to, pecuniary or non-pecuniary? Thank you very much. Members' questions will take as we go along. Recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Dixon.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chairman. There is one matter which should have really gone before the June meeting, and somehow it slipped through the net. So that matter relates to the Enforcement Board update that we considered. And there was one recommendation from that, which was in respect to ask Cabinet that consideration be given to resourcing of the planning enforcement team to strengthen and support the council's planning enforcement process. So if you would give consideration to that today, that would catch up on that matter.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dixon. I think that we would say we're already considering that matter. It's something that is already on our agenda and we're looking at, and we will come back to you in due course. Thank you. Anybody else? No? Then we move on to the agenda. and the housing strategy. Councillor Fredericks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everybody. It's lovely to see you in person. I'm very honoured and proud to present this report to you. It's been a strategy that's been formulated with the help of many of the stakeholders that are going to be involved in North Norfolk, town and parish councillors and members here as well as officers too, landlords and housing associations. So I'd like to give you Nikki Debbage, who's going to take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fredericks. Officer Debbage.
Thank you, councillors. As Councillor Fredericks said, the strategy comes out of considerable work, both looking at the framework of the priorities in the corporate plan, but then evidence that we gathered around the state of the housing market in North Norfolk and gap analysis as to where the biggest impact could be made by the council working with partners. We also, as Councillor Fredericks said, carried out considerable consultation to understand other stakeholders' views. And as a result of that, I'd like to present the strategy that you have in front of you. It focuses on 4 areas, really, some of which I think are very clearly well known, such as the need for more supply of affordable housing, more new affordable housing, but also perhaps picks up on issues that haven't been so strong in our priorities previously, such as the condition, particularly around energy efficiency of the existing stock, and also how we use the existing stock. And then the 4th element of the strategy is around not just the bricks and mortar element of housing, but how people live in those homes and sustain those homes and the support that we can provide to those. The strategy comes with an extensive action plan for the next 4 to 5 years worth of projects. There's a little more work just to refine that to make sure that the dates are achievable before we publish the final strategy, but the actions in there are the actions for the strategy. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to cover those.
Thank you very much. Can I ask, is there any councillor wishing to speak on this item? Councillor Rest and then Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just have a couple of points, if you don't mind. One is a little bit of background information, which might be useful. I can find the page I'm looking for. Page number 30. Sorry about this. There we go. Some of you may know that I used to be a non-executive director for Victory Housing and obviously took over all of the council stock at the time, long before I was a councillor. Interesting fact, I went back over some papers, and in 2014, Victory Housing Trust made a statement, which is still, I think, quite relevant in the fact of how far ahead we are. And it was that planning permission is not what is stopping high quality, genuinely affordable homes being built. It is a lack of government investment. And I think that that is still relevant as of today. If I could just then pick up on page 41. And there's a statement about whether this authority should take on being a mortgage broker in order to assist people with purchasing housing. I have done a little bit of research and some figures. I think a lot of caution should be placed on this, because the unfortunate thing with mortgages is that they can be repossessed. And if this authority really doesn't want to see their name on the front pages of EDP or any other paper saying that they are repossessing people's properties. And just for facts, from 2006 to 2014, which was sort of classed as the financial crash periods, etc., on average, there were 34,000 house repossessions in that year. The number has dropped, which we would expect. And it's currently, 2019 was 4,580. Now, that's not this region, that's national. But even so, it would only take 1 or 2 if we were in that position and we are the mortgage lender We're putting ourselves in, I think, quite a vulnerable place. And I'm not sure that's what we need to do. I think through another third party, we might find that more beneficial. But thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rest. Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was hoping for a little bit more on actions to control the number of second homes, given that it's 40 to 45% of houses in my ward are second homes and holiday homes. And it says under theme 3 that many actions in the strategy will mitigate the number of second homes, particularly around those related to new housing supply, but it doesn't actually. I was hoping for something a little bit more concrete to actually control second home numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll come back to that and get you an answer. Councillor Dixon.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Could I just turn your attention to page 20, please? And the aspirations that there are in terms of increasing the supply of new housing. I'm very conscious that we can produce local plans that allocate land in vast quantities. We can come up with strategies that are intended to deliver new housing. The one thing that we're short of is basically hands-on levers that actually will ensure that we deliver. And I think what's in that paragraph there exemplifies the point I'm making. We have a history of under delivery. So I guess my question is this: what confidence level do you have that it will be delivered in this strategy? You know, that we're going to meet our targets. So what level of confidence, please? Maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is the least and 10 is the greatest, would help.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Fredericks, did you want to answer those, or?
Yeah, I can answer it a bit, and I'm sure that Nikki will help me as well on this. As for the second homes, unfortunately, we have no. We can't actually control that from this council. This is a government issue. This isn't something that we can actually have much say on. I'm sure that Nikki will agree with me on that. As for delivery, I'm really confident because we've already gone over our target for affordable homes for this year and also next year. And we have some really exciting developments coming up in the pipeline, which I'm sure that we'll be sharing with you in due course. But I'll hand over to Nikki. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fredericks. Yeah, as far as second homes is concerned, I know this is perhaps more of a political issue, and I'll leave that for other members to bring up any further comments they wish to make. But Councillor Fredericks is right, our control locally is very limited. Delivery, again, correct. We have a pipeline that we monitor. We work with our housing association partners and also with planning colleagues to identify schemes that are coming up, and our pipeline gives me good confidence that we will be helping to we will be delivering our target of 100 affordable homes a year. We also have measures of our own to help support that. So we've recently approved the use in principle of Section 106 grant to help support that. And we have an enabling colleague who works with registered providers, housing associations, and with local communities to encourage the development of affordable homes. Coming back to Councillor Rest's point, we have said we will investigate whether the council should provide shared ownership mortgages, because there is an issue with shared ownership mortgages. But I do take on board the point. I don't think it would be our first choice as an action, but it may be something that we have to resort to if no other way of providing shared ownership mortgages can be found. But we will be looking at other ways to help tackle that issue. I think that covers the points that were picked up, but happy to take any other points or questions.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the chair of the Planning Policy and Built Heritage Working Party, I can assure my colleagues here, and in particular Councillor Holiday, that we did look in depth at what measures we could introduce locally in our local plan to restrict the number of second homes in our district. And Councillor Fredericks is absolutely right. We are very, very limited in what we can do. This, in the opinion of the planning policy manager, is a matter for national government to introduce, to look at. Help is on the way in the new homes scheme, but that obviously will only relate to properties in the future, in that we can control who occupies those new properties. As an authority, we will have delegated power. As regards the performance of this council, I can see from the papers on page 20 that we do meet our new affordables homes target. In one sense, what damages our performance is that when we deduct the right to buy sales and voluntary sales, it reduces somewhat drastically by about 80%. One solution to this, in my view, would be for government to no longer offer right to buy. This has been achieved in other parts of the UK, and it's something that government should be looking at. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Dixon.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I may have missed it, but I did suggest that an indication of confidence level on the scale 1 to 10 would be perhaps helpful in indicating on that. Maybe from both the cabinet member and from the officer might help.
I'm happy to come in there first. I'll give it a solid 9. I mean, there are events outside our control in the wider housing market that may impact, but I think as far as the pipeline that we can see locally, I am very confident.
Yeah, I totally agree. Looking at the pipeline, the future looks fantastic, and I'm very, very proud of the officers that have worked on this and have been engaging with. I have been engaging as well with the housing associations, and I'm very confident as well. So I'll go with a 9 with Nikki. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Those 2 9s are very helpful.
Excellent. And I think it's really important. You know, I'm really pleased to see this paper come forward. I think it's the work of collaboration of an awful lot of parties coming together. And I think it bodes well for the future. It's what we said we wanted to do in our plan, and we are moving in the right direction. So let's keep it going and let's keep moving forwards. Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I know in other authorities work is done with sort of large builders and developers in order to help deliver the sort of planning strategy that councils have. So looking through this, trying to tease that out, can perhaps the cabinet member give us some confidence that actually that work can be progressed as well? Is that something worthy of inclusion?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, we've been liaising with all the housing associations, and the briefings and the strategy briefings actually included developers as well.
I was thinking more about developers as opposed to housing associations.
Yes, they were consulted when we were doing the strategy. So yeah, and I'm really pleased that we have developers that want to work with us and want to provide social housing first, and then market housing. So I'm really proud of that. Thank you.
Yes, I think we can see there's one particular scheme that springs to mind, and that was the scheme that we went through in Walcott. You know, so we are progressing and working with partners to do that. So thank you for bringing it up.
Oh, can I just add? And we'd welcome any other developers that have a social manifesto to come forward, and we'd like to work with them too. So thank you.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Rest, and then I'm going to take a.
Sorry, yeah, very, very quick question. It's just a comment that was made about, and Nikki will know this, about right to buys. Right to buys are actually virtually non-existent anymore, and very few people are using them because those properties are for people that have been there a long, long time, so not using it. It's now called a right to acquire, and the right to acquire, the difference between the two is money.
Yeah.
It costs an awful lot more money to have a right to acquire. So you will find that a lot of these are not being used now, I think, on second homes. Just a point of clarification. Thank you.
I think that that's certainly valid to a certain extent, but I think one of the things that we have found is that family members, younger family members, have come along with the money to purchase these, allow their family to continue to live in them. And that has been an issue for us in North Norfolk. Whether it will continue to be or not, I don't know at this stage. Unless anyone's got anything further, I would ask whether we have a seconder for this paper, please. Councillor Shires. Thank you. In which case, can we move to the vote, please? All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. Thank you. The Community Renewal Fund, I'm going to ask Councillor Kershaw to report on, as Councillor Kershaw runs share of the work on this with officers.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I would just like to add a resolution, if that's possible. And that will be that the Cabinet recommend to full council the establishment of a new capital budgets for the North Walsham and Fakenham schemes of £800,000 each, with each scheme being funded through the CRF bid 600,000 and the balance 200,000 as match funding from the council. If I could add that, that would be appreciated. The timescale of these putting these bids together has been incredibly short, and I just have to commend the work of officers getting these bids structured, revised, upscaled to get the relevant percentages to move forward. Both bids have now been accepted. They are backed by both our MPs, and there has been a great deal of cooperation to get this work through. It's been an unfair timescale, I think. And now the bids have gone through, they're in the hands of MHCLG in Wolverhampton. These will be awarded in July, and even then there's a very tight timescale to get the work done by March of next year. So we know that there's still a lot of work to do, but it has been an interesting and time-consuming operation. But I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Councillor Kershaw. Yes, I think it's been, the team have done a fantastic job working in very, very short timeframes, but it's been hugely collaborative work, which is wonderful to see. Does anyone have any questions on these? Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to add to Councillor Kershaw's comments, and I'm certainly speaking from a Fakenham perspective, add to thanks to those on the representative of the Town Council, particularly the Mayor, Julie Fortsey, and the Deputy Mayor, Angela Glynn, who had a paper almost ready to go, which I think was folded into the submission that was made. Perhaps, Councillor Kershaw, just remind us when we are likely to hear the outcome of the bids. I know it's probably buried somewhere in the information we've got, but...
I'm not sure when we're actually here, but the bids that will be they're issued on the end of July, aren't they? Thank you.
That was certainly my understanding. Councillor Rest.
Thank you, Chairman. As the other Fakenham ward member, just a couple of comments really, and thank you very much. I think we really appreciate the work that has been done over in that area. I would just make one comment, one of the bullet points on page 51, second one down. I think that's a very heavy task to expect to be able to get both cycling and walking down from the town centre to Pensthorpe. It's nigh on impossible. I assure you, it's been tried and many people have done it. I would love to see people be able to do it. We get more requests from people of how do I cycle to Pensthorpe, or how do I well, if you take your life in your hands and go down the road, you're more than welcome. But it would be nice if it could be done. And you won't connect all three, but I mean the racecourse and the Hall Canal. The Hall Canal is a slight problem because you've got to cross the main road, but again, it can be done with caution. The other one is on section 3 of that page 51. I know there are no priorities, but there's been a lot of talk in Fakenham about the Lido. And I think that should be given some sort of priority when people come to go. There is a lot of support for it, and I think there would be a lot of finance, private finance and fundraising events that people will want this to take place. It's probably gone further now than it's gone before with all our projects of swimming pools, etc., etc. So I think while the motivation is there, we should be really pushing on that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? In which case, do we have a seconder, please? I'm happy to second this paper if everyone is content with that. Excellent. In which case, can we move to a vote, please? All those in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. So then we move to the Greens Road football facility. Have I skipped one? Sorry, the street trading consent fees. Councillor Kershaw.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for this paper coming late to council. This has been drawn up to try and help businesses recover from COVID. There are or have been quite expensive fees generated or charged for street markets. A lot of the businesses we're trying to help aren't in a position to pay these fees. This is a paper to suspend these fees for this year only. I have noted at the back of the paper all the streets throughout that have restrictions on are listed, but I will make sure that the local members are informed of the streets that are
Thank you.
covered. But I commend this paper to be accepted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kershaw. Is anyone wishing to speak on this paper? Do we have a seconder for this paper, please? Councillor Seward, thank you. In which case, can we move to a vote, please? All those in favour? Thank you very much. It's unanimous. Now we move to the Greens Road football facility.
Thank
Councillor Gay,
you.
thank you.
I'd just like to say that this proposal has received very careful attention. This is an excellent club. It supports 24 teams, and in order to make progress, it needs an extension to its lease. So I have no hesitation in recommending to you that you support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gay. Does anyone wish to speak on this item? Councillor Seward and then Councillor Dixon.
I'd just like to second this and say that North Walsham Football Club is very much a community club in the town. I have been involved in and out of discussions over the lease improvements to this facility. It is essential that some key works are done around the boilers and the sewage system there. This will then act as the precursor to the club signing a longer lease, putting it on a much more stable footing, which will enable it then to apply for grants and attract funding to improve the amenities at the football club, which are needed. And also it opens up then the opportunity for an all-weather 3G pitch to hopefully be installed with significant support from the Football Association funds at this club. So I thoroughly recommend this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Seward. Councillor Dixon, you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I just seek clarification really in relation to recommendation 2. And my clarification there I'm seeking is, do we know what the rent increase will be and whether that is has been confirmed as affordable by the football club?
Councillor Gay.
My understanding is that this agreement has been drawn up with the complete approval of the football club. Yes, that's why it's taken a long time and a lot of attention. Because the football club needs this work to be done. And so the council will be able to recoup the costs through the new lease. And that has been done with the agreement of all parties. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. So in other words, the rent has been agreed in advance.
Madam Chairman, I think it would be helpful if the paper had actually shown that so that we've got that before us, but I'm content to take the Cabinet members' assurance that that is indeed the case. But I think for the purposes of the record, so to speak, it would be helpful if that were in the paper.
Thank you. I don't know whether there was a reason, financial information or what have you, but we'll find out, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Rest.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a point of interest. On option 2, I'm just curious as to why there isn't an option 3, which would have been to fund the cost of the capital works. Because the funding of the capital works will be done fairly straightforward and straight away, whereas the extension of the lease is 21 years. So isn't that one option? And then option 3 is to fund the cost of the capital works with the payments coming back over the increased rent, just because one will finish while the other one is still running.
Councillor Gay.
My understanding is that the lease needed to be extended in any case, because in order to achieve funds from other bodies, the club had reached the point where there was not enough time left on their lease to acceptably apply for funding. They needed this security before anyone would invest in the club. So I think that's why it was done that way around. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? In which case, this having been proposed and seconded, can I have a show of hands of those in favour, please? Thank you, and that's unanimous. Now we come to item 12, the refurbishment and letting of Cedar House, and I move to Councillor Seward.
Right, thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Members, in essence, the recommendation that is before the Cabinet today is that the Council withdraws from its current proposal to sell the whole site, the Cedar House New Road site, as set out in the Cabinet decisions of November 2014 and March 2020. The second proposal is that the Council retains ownership of Cedar House and brings it back into use, and then markets the premises for letting to commercial organisations, to community organisations or to the private sector. And it looks to dispose of the rest of the site, and a further report is brought back to Cabinet on the appropriateness and feasibility of doing this. The sale of this site started in June 2014, when an unsolicited offer to open a pub and restaurant on the site was received by the Council. That was some 7 years ago. And now we are actually no farther forward, and the building itself has remained empty for nearly 5 years after the previous tenants left. There is no immediate or early prospect of completion and development of this site as a pub or restaurant by the intended purchaser, JD Wetherspoons, from what we know from talking to them in the proposed contracts. Indeed, they've indicated to us and have always said it would take between 2 and 3 years before a pub on this site would actually open. That means there's no prospect of a pub on this site until late 2023, or more likely 2024. We also know that from the pandemic, that the pub trade and the companies involved in it have been badly hit, and that there is no prospect or little prospect from the discussions that we've had with the company's representatives in the last 12 months, that they will be in a position to make a decision as to whether they can actually buy this site and open a pub until later this year, when their business model and performance becomes clearer, when hopefully the pub trade starts to reopen. In saying that, JD Wetherspoons have always said that they would be interested coming to the town. There's one thing saying you are interested, there's another thing actually doing it. In summary, the council has tried its best, and there is no early prospect of Wetherspoons actually opening a pub on this site. And I can say, as a local member, who has been involved and has seen this matter since it first started in June 2014 as a local resident and someone that actually uses local pubs. But the message that I'm increasingly coming across to me in the town is that after all this time, for goodness sake, bring this historical building, which dates back to the 19th century, back into use. It's just don't let it remain empty and become increasingly derelict and dilapidated. With the Heritage Action proposal aimed at making the town centre of North Walsham a good place to do business and to attract a growing number of local residents within the town and outside, plus visitors to come to our town centre. We cannot have a prominent site in the town simply remaining derelict and looking increasingly dilapidated for a number of years to come. With grants under the HAS scheme, and it includes generous and significant help from Historic England, it is now financially viable to bring back the Cedars building into use and let it to community groups and private sector businesses. The refurbishment of the Cedars will remain in the council's control, as will the letting of space in this building. And that as a result, we aim to make it into a living and working building again by the latter part of 2022. In other words, in just over a year's time. The great advantage of us retaining this building is that we are in control. In addition, we look to sell the remaining part of the New Road site to maximise the financial return on this valuable asset for the benefit of all North Norfolk residents. I therefore move, Madam Chairman, the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I, before we go any further, just remind members that if you wish to refer to anything in purple papers, then we will have to move into private session. Hopefully, because these papers have included recommendations from officers, we won't have to. But if members wish to, then we would have to move into private session. Councillor Gay.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to say that I most strongly endorse everything that Councillor Seawood has said, and it's my pleasure to second this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to? Councillor Rest.
Thank you, Chairman. Also, thank you. On page 68, 9.2, I'd just like to thank the people that wrote the report for informing members of what the current costs have been while we've been sort of sitting with an empty running building. It actually saves us having to ask the question and dig out how much it has cost. So thank you for being open and honest and telling us how much it's cost the authority. Thank you.
Councillor Holliday.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Have we a pipeline of community groups and private sector organisations that would be wanting to rent space in this? Because looking at the performance report, we haven't got a return on assets performance metric because we haven't got the data, and the occupancy rate of council-owned spaces is just about target, but not stellar. And I wondered if that would be reassuring to know that people actually were going to want to rent space in this beautiful building.
We've already had several inquiries since this paper went to, out into the public domain. So there is definitely interest, and we have a number of community groups who already said that they would like to come.
Thank you.
Councillor Cushing.
Thank you. I certainly endorse what Councillor Seawood has said about the frustrations with Wetherspoons, and clearly that's not going to fly. But one of the options I don't see down here is any other consideration given to actually sell the whole site. I mean, has that been looked at? Councillor Seawood can have his views on that.
Councillor Seawood.
Yes, in one of the reviews, it was looked at. As I say, it's now become financially viable to retain this historic building. It was a building which for a long time was owned in the last century by the Smith family in the town. And it was through that family that the ownership of the site ended up in being passed to the Urban District Council. That was the predecessor to the District Council and coming into public ownership. Just say the Smith family was a prominent business and philanthropic family within the town, and they actually lost 2 sons in the First World War. So the building does has a role as a public place, but it's through the Historic England grant that the option of retaining this building for public use, which I must say does have, well, retaining this building by the council, either for commercial or community use, which does have strong support, in my view, within the town, has now become a viable option rather than disposing of the whole site. So that is what has actually been the changing factor. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Shires.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to just ask the question, looking at the map. It is known locally that there was a public pathway between Hall Lane and New Road, and it's not quite clear what would happen because currently it's fenced off, and what is going to happen with the new plan.
When I was a county councillor for the area, I had to spend some considerable time working this one out. There is no registered public right of way on this site, but there is pretty well overwhelming evidence that this this pathway has been used for 20 years or more. And indeed, one of the challenges with this site, I'm not sure that that was necessarily properly realised when we first started discussions with Wetherspoons. The option now is that with the development of the site in relation to how it's developed, that a footpath either in its existing format or through a slight diversion to the edge of the site will be arranged. That's set out in the paper, and that is what will happen.
Thank you, Councillor Seward. Anybody else wishing to speak on this item? Right, in that case, this having been duly proposed and seconded, can we move to the vote, please? All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. Councillor Seward, we come to you again, please, for the Melbourne slope.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Clearly, the actual details here are covered in purple papers, and therefore, if members have questions on that, we will have to go into private business. This site was widely advertised in April to let. We've had 6 proposals or expressions of interest, and the Cabinet now invited by the estates team to consider them, and a recommendation is made for a preferred party. Can I just say that this is a prominent and in many ways an iconic building right at the centre of the Cromer Promenade. It's very important that buildings like this, in my view, are not left semi-empty, allowed to become increasingly derelict and dilapidated. It is completely contrary to our aim to make Cromer one of the best tourist offers in the country. And therefore, I do take the view that we should move to lease this property. The attraction that we actually have is that the preferred party will invest heavily in bringing this building back into use. That is the only way, given the constraints that are now on the council in terms of how we can use our own money for commercial gain. And therefore, I commend the recommendations to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Seward. Do we have anyone wishing to speak on this item? Councillor Rest.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of note. Are you aware that in last Thursday's EDP, they named the proposed preference? It was clearly stated what this council would be voting for.
I wasn't aware.
It's
Thank
on
you
the-
for bringing that to our
It's
attention.
online on the EDP, that they actually mentioned the name and said that there were others, but the preferred option for this, for you to vote for, is the one that's on here. I just thought you ought to be aware.
Thank you very much, councillor. Does anybody else wish to comment? I think that's something that we will get investigated. Right, in which case, do we have a seconder, please, for this proposal? Councillor Kershaw? All those in favour? Thank you very much. It's unanimous. Right. Moving to item 14, property transaction lease proposal at Unit D, Hornbeam Road.
Again, Chairman, a lot of the detail of this is actually in the purple papers, and again, if members have questions on it, we will have to go into private business. The recommendations are set out on page 97 of the hard copy papers. What is proposed here is a rent recycling scheme so that it avoids the council of using any of its capital reserves for the limited investment that's required to enable this to be a commercially viable lease to the council. Can I just say that on the recommendation C, I would like to make a slight change, and that I don't believe that in the interest of transparency, that in having a rent recycling, a financial strategy for a rent recycle scheme, which is what we're probably going to have moving forward, should be a matter that's simply left to officer delegation in consultation with myself. I believe it is important that this is brought back to the cabinet, even if it is simply to note. So therefore, I would suggest that a revised, that recommendation is revised to say that we approve that officers develop a financial strategy for a rent recycling scheme in conjunction, in consultation with the cabinet portfolio holder, and that is brought back to cabinet for approval.
Thank you. Is anyone wishing to speak on this item? Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I seek clarification to a matter that is in the purple papers, but I think that it is possible for us to deal with this if I craft my question carefully.
Please be very careful, otherwise I'm very happy to move into private session if we have to, if you wish to discuss something
I
in
don't
purple
think
papers.
we need to, but let me just, and do stop me if I look as I'm going, but I'm going beyond the line.
I'm looking at
but,
our legal advisor, so he will acknowledge if we have
Thank you.
to.
Can I just turn your attention, please, to page 103, and in particular, paragraph 1.10. There is a figure quoted, which is the financial return, and on the second line, there is a figure there which is quoted. My query really is this: is that figure gross or net, please?
Councillor Seward, are you able to answer that question?
I think that that's better coming from an officer rather than myself.
You have Mr. Ellis and Mrs. Garfer on the call if you're able to, one of those is able to advise you in that regard, Chair.
Thank you very much, officer.
So just to, sorry, excuse me, just to clarify, that is the gross rent divided by the asset valuation.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. But I wonder if outside of the meeting, we can be given the net figure, please.
I'm sure that can be arranged.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's absolutely fine. We can do that.
Thank you. Anybody else got any questions? Okay. In which case, do we have a seconder, please, for this? Councillor Kershaw. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Right. There being no further business and we haven't needed to exclude the press and public, I'd like to thank you all for attending this morning and I call the meeting closed. Thank